Hello, everybody, and welcome back to yet another episode of the Cup Screenplays, brought to you by Cup of Hemlock Theatre. I am your ginger host and co-artistic producer, Mackenzie, and today we are talking about a truly spectacular Scottish piece. It is the one and only, the prime of Miss Jean Brodie. I'm dropping that accent. We're done with that. We're done with that now. But yes, we were talking about the prime of Miss Jean Brodie in honor of the passing of the late, great Maggie Smith in September of 2024. We felt this was the perfect time now because it's also Oscar season. And Prime Miss Jean Brodie is an Oscar-winning movie. So we were like, this is the moment. Let's do some Dame Maggie Smith. So that's what we're doing today. And I have a fantastic panel with me. I have, first off, welcome back, Alicia.
Hi, happy to be back. Good morning,
Hello.
good afternoon, good evening for whenever you're watching this.
Good day. Yeah. Welcome. How are you? What's in your cup today? What have you been up to? Give us the 411.
I'm good. I'm feeling great today. I have just a good old cup of coffee to, keep me alert and ready for these questions. It's decaf though, because I already had tea this morning. So
Very good.
not too much caffeine.
So responsible.
Yeah, I'm trying something new. And I've been great. Still in the acting world, in the playwriting world, and all that fun stuff.
Amazing. And back from the witch trials in Salem, we have the wonderful Sarah.
Woo! Hello.
Yeah.
Yes, excited to be back and talking. As much as I love The Crucible, I'm excited to be here to talk about something very different. Thank you so much for having me back.
Yeah. I mean, funny enough, though, both Crucible and As You Birdie do have a very strong female cast of young girls in there. So
they do. It's true. There is some very overlapping themes in the two.
Yes.
So we're not completely departing away from things that we've talked about before.
Not yet. We'll have to find something really like a 180 from anything like you've done before.
Exactly. I don't know what will be next, but yes, I feel like it's just going to be a full pivot.
Yes. Who knows? Maybe she's the man.
Yes. Hey, that is a true classic. One of my faves.
It is.
So
yep. Same thing with like 10 Things I Hate About You. That'd be another good screenplay for us to do.
Ooh, yeah.
Yeah.
Shakespeare it up.
Mm-hmm.
Shakespeare it up, right? Shakespeare can be fun. Sarah, what's in your cup though? You didn't tell us what's in your cup.
Oh yes, I have some orange pico tea. Mine is also decaf. I too am like Alicia, trying to be responsible with my caffeine intake today. So
love that. And new to the panel is someone who we talked about when we did our Fringe Roundup review. We have the wonderful Hilary, who I saw doing a very scantily clad, fantastic Fringe show.
Hi, thank you for having me, friends.
Yes.
Thanks for having me. I was like, was I scantily clad? I had cargo pants on.
You did have cargo pants. You did have cargo. Mind you, the red underwear was a very prominent theme of that whole piece.
That really was the artistic choice of having the entire set covered in red panties was super fun, and I may never get that opportunity.
It's true.
Except for unless we do Desperate Measures again.
I would love to see Desperate Measures again. Listen, I said in that Fringe Roundup, that is like a prime perfect show to make into a TV series.
Yes, I watched it. Thank you for giving it so much love. We appreciated it. Actually, they were just nominated for a My Entertainment World Award for Best New Work. So that was, so I appreciate the love you all gave it and everything like that. It was super fun.
Yes.
But I'm really excited to be here to talk about the prime of Miss Jean Brodie, maybe Dame Maggie Smith, an icon. And I'm also having coffee. And it's so funny that you both talked about the decaf of it all, because as I was making this, I was like, I should have decaf, but I haven't had any caffeine yet today. So I held off for my one for this. But because I'm one of those gals that always needs 16 beverages, I put it in a very fancy cup, and it's soda water and grapefruit juice. So a little hot, a little cold.
Love that.
Excited to be here.
Well, Hilary, I'm with you on this because I have my cup of Earl Grey tea, not decaf, in the cup. And right, on brand. And then I also have my cup of Crystal Light as well, my orange tangerine Crystal Light there too, because I got a feeling it's going to be a very meaty conversation. So lots of fluids required to get through this. So, but let's get into this piece because this is one we've thought about doing, and now we've finally done it. And I rewatched it to get ready for it. And obviously, when Maggie Smith passed, it was airing on TCM, and I was just blown away by how relevant and how timely and timeless this piece is. But Sarah, give us your thoughts. Like, kind of, what do you think of the film overall? Because you posted in our group chat a very nice message about the movie after watching it.
Yes, I sure did. I think what I said was "wow" in all caps.
Yeah.
I had not seen it before and knew nothing about it, and I just sort of kept it that way when I went in to watch. I just thought this is a rare opportunity to dive into something with absolutely no preconceived ideas of what I'm coming into. And it really did wow me. I loved it. And I watched it last Sunday. So I've been thinking about it every day. Like, it really stuck with me. And I know we always kind of talk about, would we recommend it to others? And for me, it was a big yes. Because I think what struck me most about it was, as you just said, how relevant it still feels to today. What really sat with me all week was the larger political themes that it unearths, particularly given our political climate today. I think it was the character study of this person who is like this charismatic figure who is able to bring a following, like create a devoted following, and how she is then able to influence their thinking, their actions with her ideals and her through her different manipulations or tactics or whatever you might call that, but because she's created this devoted following. And I just thought, I thought that was so interesting when we're the movie is set in the 30s leading into World War II. So she's talking about Mussolini and how she is this devotee of his ideologies. And she is enacting some of the same tactics in her own environment, in her school. We see that same sort of charisma and developing of a following in her little world. And it's so interesting given the era that the film is set in, but also the time when the movie was made. I think, was it 1969? Do I have that right?
It comes out in 1969, yeah. The play came out before that, and so did the book.
Right. So so they chose to make this film at a time that was also very politically tumultuous. And then watching it today in our political climate and going, ooh, like, you can still see that some of those same tactics being used by political figures in today's world. And it's still so relevant. And also too, and I know we are going to talk a little bit about this, but just what also struck me was the theme around the impressionability of youth and how young people can be so influenced because they're at that impressionable age. And so we see it in this school environment, and there's themes that come up around that. But it was bringing all kinds of pieces of history to mind for me, between the Hitler Youth, which would have been more around this era, but then also today, how we see the radicalization of young people who follow alt-right podcast speakers. And so I was really floored by how a piece could be so timeless and evoke such an impact and feelings in me today with what I'm experiencing and what we're experiencing in the world. And it's a piece from a completely different era and time. So that was really what struck me and sat with me all week. So I loved it. And I just feel like people need to watch it. If people have not heard of it or seen it, it is a worthwhile film.
Timely in so many ways.
Right?
And so much crossover. Yeah.
Go for it, Hilary. Give us your thoughts. You're teed up. You're ready. Go.
Sorry. No, I also never seen it. Like, shout out to Dame Maggie Smith, though. What I will say, and I hope this doesn't take us too far to a different topic yet, but like, to me, Maggie Smith has been, so I was messaging Mackenzie, and I was like, oh, Maggie Smith to me has always been the same age, because I grew up watching her in The Secret Garden, where she plays like the headmistress.
She's like the head housekeeper character.
Yeah. She's like, and she's so good in it. And I remember like being a little girl and loving the movie and stuff like that. So and I've seen photos and some videos of her when she's younger, but it was so cool to watch her like 30 years before, basically, or 25. And she's in her prime, you know what I mean? And just seeing all of that. But I thought there was so much crossover with the political climate that we're in these days, and as Sarah put so well, like the radicalization of young people, and how just impressionable young people or anyone can be, you know, like it. I don't have a ton of words to it that will be spoken as well as Sarah did, but just so much crossover and feeling so relevant. And it's I found myself conflicted, and I don't know if anyone else did, but I was like, it must have been so radical in one direction to see this like single woman in her 40s in 1969, but like in the 30s where it takes place, and how progressive that is, and how advanced she is in so many ways and worldly. And I was like, that's so amazing that these young girls at this conservative school, like, that they get this taste, and how effective teachers can be on you and just adults as a young woman. But then there's also, you know, you can be affected in many different ways.
Yes.
But I really enjoyed it.
Yeah. Alicia?
I haven't heard anything about this film until it was presented to me in the group chat of the Cup of Hemlock reviews. And I said, okay, great. I will look into this for sure. And so, similar to Sarah, I've just never heard about this film. I watched it a couple of days ago. And at first I was like, okay, this seems nice. I'm enjoying the classroom vibes. There's a teacher. She's stirring things up a bit. And then things got hectic. My jaw was on the floor. I was rereading my notes because I was like, okay, just paying attention to every little thing that's happening. And then at one point I was like, wait, that character and that character, wait, what's happening now? So it really stuck out to me. And as mentioned, the political views as well. There are things that are still very relevant as women, and just the dynamic between teacher and student conversations that I just wasn't expecting, because again, didn't do it. I wanted to be surprised. I wanted to be pleasantly surprised when watching the film. So, and I thought it was very dramatic. Overall, I really enjoyed it. I was rewatching it again just before filming, just to get some reminders. And still, like, I think this is a sort of film that you can rewatch at any point in your life and feel either connected or relate to any amount of the characters that are presented here. So those are my general thoughts on it.
I love it. I mean, I'm gonna back all three of you up and just go. So I came to this because I had a university teacher recommend this film to me, because I was saying how much I love Maggie Smith to him, and he went, "Oh, well, you should watch The Prime of Miss Jean Brodie." I'm like, "What is that?" And he goes, "Matt, go to the York Library on your Friday night and rent the movie and watch it and come back to me." And I went, "Oh my God, Mark, that was incredible. Like just blew me away." It's like, I know. And I went, I'd never seen her so young. Like, I'd seen her, as you know, in Hook, Professor McGonagall, like Downton Abbey. Like, she was older Maggie Smith. Always old Maggie Smith. It's kind of like Judi Dench. Judi Dench is always just being old. Not in a bad way.
But like for 30 years. Like,
yes.
Same age for 30 years. Yeah.
Yes.
Transcendent. She transcends time.
Exactly. So yeah, watching it at the time, I was just blown away by her performance. And then rewatching it again when she passed back in September, I was like, oh my God, like, how relevant is this film? Like, it's just wild. Like particularly the political things. Because they were showing clips of this film on YouTube, like when you're scrolling through the reels. And it's the famous confrontation scene between her and the headmistress character, when she basically says, I'm a teacher, that's my life, that's my dedication. And when you watch that clip, you're like, yeah, you go, Miss Brodie. And then you watch the rest of it, you're like, oh, no. This is no. So people clipping up that one really emotional scene, and then you're not knowing the bigger story, and watch people comment on it. I was like, oh, no. She's not what you think she is. She's definitely
nuance.
Nuance. Yeah. There are layers to her. So I thoroughly enjoyed the film. And so I try and get as many people to watch it as I can, because people always say how much they love Maggie Smith. And I'm like, well, have you seen, her in Death on the Nile, her in, Prime of Miss Jean Brodie, her, and I forget what the Neil Simon play one she did was. But she worked for decades. And people were like, old Maggie Smith. I'm like, yeah, she's great in that. But like, what you really want to see her is in her prime, like in her younger years, to see her really like get the lead roles. Because by the time she got to being, Downton Abbey, Harry Potter, she was like the classic supporting character now. Like she had great one-liners and great scenes, but it wasn't like this where it's like, she's in the meat of the story and it's like she's leading the show.
I actually watched like a really quick YouTube video last night again to like remind myself of exactly what had happened because I'd watched it I watched it 3 days ago. And this was apparently like for film at least. She had been with the RSC and everything, but this was kind of her first lead and her first chance to do that like meat and potatoes acting that like we all know is so nice. And it's I also just can't believe I think she was in her 40s actually when they filmed this, or maybe late 30s. And I'm like, what were you doing before, you idiots? Like obviously there were many other people, but wonderful.
Well, I mean, we're kind of talking about Maggie Smith, so we'll kind of dive in a little bit deeper into Dame Maggie Smith here. And what are our thoughts about her portrayal? Was she able to endear herself to you? Like, were you able to get sucked up in her, in her performance as a teacher? Like, what are your thoughts on that? Alicia, what do you think?
I thought her performance was wonderful. I also will say, in terms of Maggie Smith, I haven't seen her in her filmography is phenomenal, but I noticed that I haven't really seen her in the movies that I watch. But I noticed her I was looking through her filmography. I was like, oh my God, she's been in almost literally everything. So I connected with Sister Act 2 because I remember her from that movie.
Yes, that's right.
She's in Sister Act 2?
She's in both Sister Acts.
She's in 1 and 2.
She plays the Mother Abbess.
Yes.
Of course.
It makes sense, right? Like
carry on. Yeah.
I had the exact same reaction. So I think just Maggie Smith, such a phenomenal actor, holds her own. And seeing her filmography of how many different films she's been in throughout her life, it's also so comforting to know, since Hilary, you brought up that she was in this movie when she was in her 40s. So as I'm also an actor, and it's so comforting to hear that women of an older age can hold their own, be lead actors, and still make a difference. She won an Oscar for this performance, as she should. It was phenomenal. I was blown away. And I think now, I've never actually seen Sister Act 1. I've seen Sister Act 2 so many times.
What?
But now I know, right? Now I have to see Sister Act 1. And I think I'll I really want to also look into Death on the Nile, right?
Yep, Death on the Nile,
Death on the Nile. I saw that that was on her list of things she was in, so I want to look into
that. She plays one of the lesbian couple in that.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah.
We love a progressive queen.
Right?
Truly. So those are my thoughts. I thought she did a wonderful job. Miss Brodie is a character for sure. She's complex. As I was rewatching it, the first time I watched it, I said, you know what? I'm team Miss Brodie. And then I was rewatching it again this morning and I said, oh, wait, I missed that on my first watch. Well, I think there is a question that we'll get into further details about that.
Yes.
But overall, I thought Maggie Smith did a phenomenal job.
Yeah. Hilary, what do you think?
Everything that Alicia said times 2, except for the fact that she's in Sister Act, because I missed that apparently. I just also, she did such a great job. Like she's such a nuanced character, and it so easily could have been like you're on the ride, right? Like I'm on the train, I'm hooked. She's charismatic, she's empowering, she's creative, she's like enlightening and all of that. And then it's also like she's manipulative, she's like we're just all under her spell, like it's and her small moments to be so beautiful. I love that is what I love about film or like a play transferred, because you can you know, you can put a lens right up to your face and see how she feels about something in a moment, or you see that shift happen. And, you know, before she goes into the headmistress office and she has that big blow up scene, I find all those quiet moments fascinating to watch. And yeah, I just thought she did a great job. And like Alicia, like I'm now entering my mid 30s as an actress, and I'm just like trying to just like hang in there and things like that for certain things to happen. And it was really, it's just nice feedback from the industry that like that can happen, and how amazing that must have been at the time when they thought women died when they were 40, basically, you know, and like had been dead for a while or in the process of dying, I should say.
Yes.
Yeah, I thought she did wonderful.
Yeah. Sarah?
Wow. You both just took the words out of my mouth. I so echo what you both said. I agree. I'm also an actor. I also heading into my 30s, and it is really inspiring to see meaty roles for what exactly the industry. And still sometimes today we've improved a lot, but we still see less roles as women age, and to see such a meaty role and for her to be just in her prime as an actress in this, like, it is really, really inspiring. So I'm glad you both spoke to that. And I will also just echo that, how brilliant I thought she was. I had written down like, oh, I had the exact same reaction where I was like, oh, we love Miss Brodie. Like, yes, girl. And then partway through, it's like, oh, I don't know. And I think that is not easy to do. It's not easy to, this could have been a situation where the end was played at the beginning, where some of those things that are revealed later get revealed a little too soon in the performance. And so we never are endeared to her. And so it doesn't have the same impact.
Or if she took it too far, like if she was too big, if she was too,
exactly. Because, or even as she gets into the more challenging parts of her opinions, if she went too far in that direction as well, that it feels disjointed with the person we knew at the beginning. The ability to make both pieces of her feel like one real person is really incredible. And it allows us as the audience to go through exactly what Sandy goes through, to go exactly what the girls go through and the people around her, that you fall in love with her at the beginning. And then it's slowly revealed throughout. A little comment here, a little something here. And then we become disillusioned as the audience over the course of the film at this kind of the same pace as Sandy or the other characters might. So this is why it was an Oscar deserving role. And it's amazing that, as you have both highlighted already, that you come away from it and you still feel a little conflicted. Of course, we come to the end and go, ooh, okay, yeah, there's a lot of stuff there that wasn't good, but you're still like, oh, but remember when she said this, or remember when she did, like, exactly like you had said, Hilary, before, about how empowering she was. She was also really empowering to the girls and bringing interesting points of view to a very conservative school. So you still walk away feeling like, but there was things that I still feel like are true, that were really great, but also it's Harry. So
she felt very human.
Yeah,
is how I would describe it, as I'm hearing you speak as well too. It's like, she played a very good human, which is challenging to do at times.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I will round this up by just saying she played she played in the world of gray so well, where I had a history teacher, and first day of class, he wrote on the board, "Welcome to the world of gray." And he talked about how in history, labeling things as black and white removes so much of the human element that informs our history. And so he actively encouraged us to look at every bit of history in a gray lens, like find the good even in the bad, like understand why something happens so you can get there. And I felt Maggie Smith did that same type of thing in this performance. Like her monologue when she's doing the slideshow presentation in class, you're like, oh my God, I would have loved a teacher like that. Like she's almost like a Mr. Feeney from like Boy Meets World. Like she's like in that same vein of like that classic teacher that you just want to sit and learn from because they have such knowledge of life that you just want to talk and get out of them. And then, you know, facade fate comes down as you age with the students. And you go, oh, no. So I just think she did such a great job playing the gray in this. And that allowed her to play so many different levels. Like her mature love scenes. Like they weren't the young love scenes like we see with Sandy and what's his name? The art guy, Mr.
Lloyd. Mr. Lloyd.
Mr. Lloyd. Mr. Lloyd.
I created a cheat sheet. Yeah.
Thank you. Mr. Lloyd was like that dynamic of younger love, infatuation compared to her love scenes with Mr. Lloyd and Mr. Lauer were so different because they were so much more adult and realistic and human. Like it wasn't puppy dog love. There was a maturity to it, and just her owning that on screen, and then her having those big dramatic moments with the headmistress. Just like it's a layered performance that can be dissected. And Hilary, as you said, it was perfectly balanced where like you could easily play this role too big at the beginning and then lose the reveal by the end of what's really going on with her. And then you have nowhere to go in the piece. But the way they framed it from that very first scene where she meets Mary McGregor in class, you're already kind of endeared to her in the way she holds court in her classroom and kind of, you know, sticks up against the headmistress and kind of does like, yeah, no, we don't really care about that prime minister. We want art. We want to talk about these topics. And there's a hint where she talks a little bit about Mussolini in there at the very beginning, but you don't catch it for what it is right away. Didn't. It doesn't come until much later and you go, oh my. But it's just such a well done performance. But that leads us into our next question, which is Maggie Smith was not the original choice for Ms. Jean Brodie. It was originally offered to Julie Andrews, who had just won the Oscar in 1964 for Mary Poppins. And I think she had just done Sound of Music, like in the years after that, because she did Mary Poppins, Sound of Music, and then she was looking, and Julie Andrews was looking for a more mature role to do to break out of like the good nanny character type she kind of found herself stuck in. And so they offered it to her, and she just had a scheduling conflict and couldn't do it. But what do we think of this? Right? Well,
no. Like in a way, like I can't imagine anyone except for her. But yeah.
Well, I mean, Hilary, give us your thoughts about Julie Andrews. Like, what do you think that would have done having a Julie Andrews in this role versus a Maggie Smith? Like what type of energy do you think that would have brought, like as an actor, looking at these two different actors in the role?
Sorry, I also didn't mean to explode. I just can't help
No, I love that. No, that's great.
No, I think Julie Andrews also would have been so great, and it would have been so wonderful to see her play it too. Like there's so many, I think any strong female character of that time would have been great. I think maybe Julie Andrews, and maybe this is like short-sighted of me to say, I think she might have been a little bit more refined. What I liked about Maggie Smith doing it is that she could have those moments of like refinedness, but also like super grounded, animalistic. And I think that's really important for this character because she's so all over the place and really like in her body. And, you know, I think that would be really interesting. And so I think I really loved that about Maggie Smith's performance. And I wonder if we would have gotten the same thing with Julie Andrews. But also then it just would have been her version. Like Julie Andrews is also very, very talented. I just can't picture her as that. I would love to see, I haven't read the play or the novel, but I need to now. I would have loved to see Vanessa Redgrave play this. And she was doing it on Broadway, I think. And she did, I don't remember the character's name. I did it in a scene study in theater school, but Orpheus Descending. She plays Carol in that, and there's a film version of this very, very good. And I would love to see Vanessa Redgrave play this all too. And I'd love to see maybe Julie Andrews should just take a kick at the can now.
She's still in her prime. It's Julie Andrews.
Exactly. I'm like, I'll see it.
Yeah. I love that. Sarah, what do you think?
You articulated, Hilary, really well what I think was sort of in my mind. I really liked the word animalistic. for like describing how just in her body Maggie Smith was. And I think I had sort of a similar feeling that I also can totally I actually had written down that I felt like Julie Andrews would be a good fit for this, and I put in brackets Mary Poppins, because I actually could totally picture that sort of stern kind of biting teacher thing that she does.
Close your mouth, Michael. We're not a codfish.
Exactly. Like just input the line about how we only need to open the window 6 inches. Any more than that is vulgar, right? Like it's the same kind. So I can totally see her in the role. I do think from what I have seen of Julie Andrews, I feel like when she's in her like sweeter side, she is more sweet is kind of the word that I would use for her. And so I wonder if in the parts of Miss Jean Brodie that we endear us more to her and that are more in that realm, if it would have had a little bit more of a like sweet vibe versus I think what we do see with Maggie Smith that has a little bit more of that. I'm loving Hilary's word of animalistic, a little bit sexier for lack of a better word. Just like, yeah, it's just, I think that's the word that came to mind. But when you said she was really in her body and just like it's coming from the gut, like that's what we really got from. And yeah, I don't want to assume that we wouldn't have been able to see that from Julie Andrews too. I just don't have like a frame of reference for that for her. And so yeah, I just wondered if it would, I guess what I'm trying to say is I wondered if it would impact less of those kind of stern, strict biting moments, but we might have gotten a little bit of a different tone in her more endearing moments with the girls, for example. Yeah.
Can I
Alicia?
just add to that?
Yeah.
Sorry, Alicia, I don't want to cut you off. I just Googled, I threw myself on mute because Sarah said something and I was like, is it a height thing? So I just Googled how tall Maggie Smith is, and she is 5'4", basic. And I mean, this is the internet. Who knows if it's real or not?
She was only 5'4".
I was like, Maggie Smith, like, has big dick energy. I thought she was taller than that.
Yeah, I thought so too.
Yeah,
me too.
So, and and so maybe it's like powerful. Okay, so this is great. So I'm not losing my mind. No, but Julie Andrews, 5'6".
Really, I did not picture that. I would have thought Julie Andrews is shorter.
Totally.
So, anyways, we've all been duped.
We have.
Which totally speaks to the energy that you're describing. Like, it actually makes a lot of sense given the kind of nuance we're attempting to describe between how we think they might both play it. Like, that's so interesting.
So interesting. Yeah. Anyways, sorry, Alicia.
Alicia, give us your thoughts on the height difference here.
Everything I'm hearing is the height thing actually does. It makes so much sense. So thank you so much for sharing that, Hilary. In terms of Maggie Smith just owning her performance, and I thought she was like 5'8". Like she just had that energy within this character. And Julie Andrews would have done a phenomenal job. She's also very talented. And as I was writing my answers down and I was thinking like they both would have done great. Ultimately, I don't want to like pit like women together and make them face off. But I think Maggie Smith, I'm trying to say this in a way, it almost felt more powerful that she was in this role because it was her, what's the phrase, outbreaking role?
Breakout performance.
It was her breakout performance. She got an Oscar for this. I think it meant more almost to the Academy to see some, like a fresh face. Julie Andrews was still a fresh face at the time, but she already had 2 Oscars. It was Mary Poppins and then Sound of Music at this time. So she already had...
She didn't win the Oscar for Sound of Music. She was nominated, but lost.
Okay.
Yeah. Which I always go back for them. Like, she should have won for Sound of Music over Mary Poppins, but that's just me.
Okay. My apologies. Nominated. So she was familiar. She was familiar with the Academy Awards. Already had 1 Oscar by that time. So I think it was more powerful to see Maggie Smith in this role to own her own. But Julie Andrews would have done wonderfully, and I can also see her in this role as well. It would be different. It would be a different dynamic, but I could also see her in this. Maybe not as the word animalistic was used. I think that kind of frames it well. Maggie Smith kind of had this like I don't care energy, but just this ruthless fighting energy. And I see Julie Andrews as this very soft, sweet, queen-like persona. Yes, the Princess Diaries is in my head right now. But so it's tough, but I'm really ultimately I am very happy that it was Maggie Smith that took the role of Miss Brodie. Those are my overall thoughts. What about you?
Well, I mean, for me, so Julie Andrews throughout her entire career has struggled with this perception of her being nice. Because I remember when I was studying Camelot for our episode we did on Camelot when I did my musical podcast episode of that. And I don't know if you guys know Camelot the musical at all, but in the climactic scene, Lancelot and Guinevere sleep together, and she was Guinevere. Or in the book that Camelot is based on, that is what happens to Guinevere and Lancelot, and that's what causes the downfall of Camelot. And the directors didn't want to go that far. It was late 50s, early 60s. And Julie Andrews was like, no, I want to beef up my role. Like, I want to go all the way. Like, I want to sleep with, Robert Goulet as Lancelot, on stage. Like, I want to do it. And they're like, no, you can't do it. You're too nice. Like, I will have you guys kiss on stage and then you guys will be broken apart by the guards. And so it's funny how she keeps trying to shed the good girl. Like, I don't like that term, but like that ingenue role. Like both her most iconic roles are Mary Poppins and Maria von Trapp, where they are they do have hard edges to them, but they're also very soft and sweet. And Guinevere's the same way. Like, Guinevere has, an adulterous affair, but she has a very soft, warm presence on stage. Like, even when she did Victor Victoria, she was obviously mature in that and had nudity and everything else and had affairs and things like that. But even then, when I watched that one, I was like, you're still Mary Poppins to me. You're still Maria von Trapp. I can't escape that image of Julie Andrews. So I think, Hilary, you hit it right where you said, the teacher scenes would work great, but the lover scenes would probably be the scene where I would probably struggle most with her because I wouldn't be able to click that into place properly. So that's something where I was watching those scenes again. I was like, could I see Julie Andrews pulling this scene off? I'm like, I'm sure she could, because she's an Oscar-winning great actress, but I've never actually seen her do these type of mature love scenes like this. Like, every role she plays is has the essence of sweet and nice. Like, even Mary Poppins,
like regal, clean,
yes,
yeah,
exactly. And so where Miss Jean Brodie has to go by the end, and that facade has to come off. I'm like, I don't know if I could buy her as really that manipulative person, like who would do these type of things, because she just seems so genuine and kind that she would be the good teacher that, yes, would provoke students and provoke thought and challenge the system, but she wouldn't be, a fascist. She wouldn't be going that far, but she definitely would be encouraging, open the window, learn, go to the opera, doing those items. She would be that teacher, but she wouldn't be one actually manipulating a love affair between her lover and a student who is 17. There's elements of that character where I'm just like, I can't see Julie Andrews getting that grimy with the role. And Hilary, your thing about the height thing is now throwing me off, because I'm like, okay, hold on. Every time I've seen her, she's either playing an old lady in a chair, or she's acting around kids like in Harry Potter, where she looks so much harder the way they film her.
Or The Secret Garden.
Secret Garden, right? Like anything like that, where she is, she just had, I forget I said it, she had big dick energy. And it's like, Maggie Smith had that energy about her. Like, she just owned the space. Like, I would have loved to have seen her do her Stratford shows, like Anything Cleopatra, Lady M, like all those ones. I'm sure she was amazing on the Stratford stages here doing those performances. So, but yeah, Julie Andrews.
It was just even when she's playing in Downton Abbey, she's sitting in almost every scene, and your eye just goes to her. Like, can't. She owns the room even when she's sitting down with her cane. It's just like,
it's a weekend.
Yes.
It's. So I also had found out. Well, two things. It's also so interesting, right? Because it's like, as actors, we have so little control over our careers and how we're perceived. And obviously, these are like massive stars. But it's, as we all said, I'm sure Julie Andrews could do it. But it's us in our mind's eye trying to like place her in that.
Yeah.
And because we haven't had the opportunity to necessarily see that, it's just interesting. And I think just like as a perspective as an actress is interesting.
Yes.
I found something this morning as I was looking at like a couple recap videos and things like that though. And something came up in the algorithm that I don't remember her name, but the actress that played Brigitte in Sound of Music tested for one of the girls in this. So I was like, wow, the like timelines of Sound of Music and
that's wild. I mean, out of all the Von Trapp kids, I definitely could see the actress playing Brigitte fitting in with a Brodie, because Brigitte's the smartest one out of all the Von Trapp kids, who's like calling things out.
Yeah.
Actually, she's the most emotionally intelligent of all the kids, who like calls out the captain and Maria right away. She's the one that's trying to trick Maria at that first meeting with her.
Right, with the gecko or something. Or,
with the frog in the pocket, but then also saying she's Louisa, not Brigitte. Like, she's also the one that comes in reading at the very beginning. Like, I could see that actress fitting that role as like one of the Brodie girls really well. So now that you see that, I'm like, yeah, I could see that casting. I could see that working. But speaking of the Brodie girls, let's get into who we think stood out in the rest of the cast, because this is a chock full cast of great performances. So, Alicia, what did you think? Who stood out to you?
Taking a look at my notes here, and the actor who played Sandy, who is Pamela Franklin, she definitely, oh yes, on your screen, thank you.
Yeah.
So she definitely stood out to me, and I think there was no choice for her to stand out regardless, because she was one of the supporting actors in this. And also I was shocked to see, I guess we're doing spoilers. I don't know if they're
okay. Yeah, spoil it. Yeah.
Okay. The movie's been out for a while, everyone.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
But I was shocked to see the relationship developing with Sandy and Lloyd. And I think the way this actress carried from the beginning of the film, she's a bit more timid and not really talking about, the other girls were more interested in talking about sex and relationships. And she was like, I don't know how I feel about that. She didn't say that exactly, but she wasn't, she was a bit more quiet to the conversation. And to see her develop this relationship, I guess, with Lloyd, oh, it was so disturbing. It was honestly just so disturbing. I was so sad for her. But a line that really stood out to me, and the way it was delivered, the way Pamela delivered it was so powerful. I wrote it down. It was to Lloyd. She said, "You're quite a mediocre painter, Teddy. You'll never be good." And then she left. I'm like, ooh, okay, tell him. I thought that was a really powerful line. And also just to see her development throughout the rest of the film from that point. We're going to get more into this, but just I felt like this film had a lot of really powerful women. And I think she was one of them. And I think Pamela Franklin did a wonderful job in keeping my attention. And I was rooting for her. I was really rooting for her. She's a child in the situation, and I just wanted her to be okay. So she really stood out to me.
Hilary, what do you think?
I would agree with everything Alicia said 1,000%. She also was the one that, like, and the fact, I don't know how young she was when she filmed it.
She would have been 19 because she was born in 1950 in Japan, actually. And so, and this one comes out 69. So she would have been like 18, 19 years old when she did it.
That makes me happy for her that she wasn't like actually 15, 16. I assumed she wouldn't have been, but like,
never know in the 50s and 60s.
Yeah, exactly. Oh my gosh. The scene when Teddy Lloyd just like runs up to her and kisses her, and I'm like, oh God, they're so like, and she was so small, and you know, I guess it's effective, but I immediately was like, there is no intimacy coordinator. Like, I just hope like Pamela is okay. But when he runs over and picks her up and she's completely swept off her feet, not in a good way, it was like I had a visceral reaction to it.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, she just did her journey as well as Miss Brodie's was so fascinating. You had talked about the scene where she's doing the slide, where Maggie Smith is doing the slides and everything, and all the girls are commenting.
Mm-hmm.
And I instantly I started taking notes right away, and then I just continued to watch the movie. But scene reminded me so much of Mona Lisa's Smile. I don't know if any of you have seen it, but
yes.
Yeah, and I was just like, just other teacher expanding what a woman can be, basically, to these girls, expanding their minds and like making them more worldly and whatnot. Like, and I think it's been a few years since I've watched Mona Lisa Smile, but I think that character, Julia Roberts, is a little bit more, she wasn't a fascist, as long as I'm not forgetting anything. But disclaimer. But I thought that was so fascinating. So all the young girls were amazing, but obviously particularly Pamela.
Yeah. Sarah, who do you have? Are you also a Sandy fan, or is there somebody else like a Mary McGregor you want to shout out?
I'm sorry, actually, to be just like in the group here and not have something unique to say, but I also had put Sandy down as well, and I think you both articulated it perfectly. And I think maybe part of what really impressed me was that she's playing the character over at different ages, right? Like she starts younger, and then we see her grow up, and I just thought that was done really well, because in knowing now that she was around 18, 19. It didn't feel like when she was playing the younger self, it was too put on. Sometimes when an older character might play a young kid, it just feels a little, they're putting on a little bit. It doesn't feel too authentic. But that age felt I would have thought she was a lot younger if we hadn't Googled it. But at the same time, as she aged into the kind of the second half of the film, and she's in that older age, that also felt very true and authentic. And so I think that's very impressive within the span of this 2 hours to play kind of a range of ages as this person ages, but for it all to feel very grounded and authentic is really impressive. And to hold your own against Maggie Smith, like that final scene between the two of them, big wow. That was like, it was so powerful. And what we were talking about that we loved so much about Maggie Smith's performance, that she just she comes out swinging, right? Like she's ruthless in the way that, like, she just comes straight from the gut, and she doesn't take care of Sandy at all as a performer. But actually, for this young person to be giving it straight back, to also be just come in swinging, like also not take care of her scene partner, right? Like the best way to be the most generous scene partner you can be is to go for the jugular. But it can be a hard thing to do, especially for a young performer going against Maggie Smith. So for her to have held her own and to like give it right back to her in that scene in such a visceral way was really amazing, and so integral to making that scene as powerful as it was. So I also was really impressed by her. But actually, you mentioned Hilary, the girls as a whole, and I actually think shout out to the ensemble, because I think that's another piece of what made the film work so well, is that especially those 4 girls who were sort of her favorites that we see so much of. There's lots of little Jenny, right? There's lots of little scenes between a couple of the girls, or the 4 of them together, that add a lot of flavor to the film and bring out some of the themes and layers that are so important. So shout out to the ensemble too, because their interaction together, I think what I liked about it so much was it just felt, it's like girlhood, like just the way that young girls are together and are playful together and laughing and giggling together when they have an inside joke or whatever it might be. They really embodied that in a beautiful way. And it was important, and that was important to the themes that we're going to continue to come out through the end of the film. So
yeah, I mean, I also had Sandy on my list too, Pamela Franklin, for her performance. But since we've all talked and sung her praises, I will give a shout out to somebody else who I think was a fascinating role, was Celia Johnson as Ms. Mackay, the headmistress character. Because it's funny when you watch it, the first part of the film, you're against Ms. Mackay, and you're like, oh, she's that curmudgeonly stereotype of the the staunchy headmistress, principal, headmaster character who's trying to beat down the good teacher who's just trying to engage the students in a new way. But then by then you're like, oh no, you were right. You were right about your thoughts on Ms. Brodie. You were right about her. Like, like I don't always agree with your methods, Ms. Mackay, but you got there in the end with what had to be done. So yeah, Celia Johnson, who is like a BAFTA winner, fantastic actress who really held their own against Maggie Smith in those confrontation scenes in the office, was just outstanding. And just, it's funny how later on Maggie Smith goes on to be in Sister Act. She kind of takes on the Ms. Mackay role of she ages into that character role of the older actress having to keep the younger actresses kind of in line. And yeah, just her way, when you watch it the first time, you feel you're against her until the end. Then you watch it the second time and you go, oh, like even in the locker room scene where she catches the girls kind of talking about their Ms. Brodie's affair and what's going on there. And you see her kind of asking these questions. And at first you're on the Brodie girl section. She's like, oh, just stop butting in. Like, let's let the girls be the girls. And you're like, no, she's being actually a good teacher going, what the hell is going on in this classroom? Like, what is happening here? Yes, it's okay to push some boundaries and teach kids, but like, there is a line, and we'll get more into that. And so I found me watching it the second time, I was more on a Ms. Mackay side than I was the first time. And I think she did a really good job of not being an outright villain, but someone who, once again, she lived in the world of gray, where she wasn't a perfect character. She wasn't the perfect headmistress. She was someone who felt something was wrong, but she couldn't quite get it at the beginning. And so she had to work for it. And I think in another version of this play, in this film, you could have done a whole story about Ms. Mackay as the main character trying to root out someone who she knows is not good in her school, kind of like a reverse Doubt, where this version is told from the priest's perspective, and Doubt's then told from Sister Aloysius' perspective, where it's like there's that weird dynamic where depending on whose perspective you're going from, it's very different stories on like how these characters get perceived. So it was fascinating. But there we go. All right, so let's talk about some production or design elements. And I'm going to kick us off with this one because I have something that I got to give a shout out to Ernest Gasser and Pat McDermott for hair and makeup for this film, because they did an incredible job aging the girls up. I think, Sarah, you were talking about how Pamela as Sandy, when she starts so young and nerdish, but then by the time we get to her in the painting scenes later on, you go, wait, is that the same character from the beginning? We're talking about a transformative look they gave to her character, and that's also actor too, the way they carry themselves. But there is something they do with the makeup, the way they they do the blush and the makeup look to make her look older. And I just thought that was so well done for all the Brodie girls. They aged them up really well. So you saw them really young, and then even I think it's Jean or Jenny, the one that Miss Brodie thinks is the one that's going to have the affair. It has a very full baby face at the beginning, but then by the end, the actress is still the same, but they've done something to her face to make it look like she's lost the baby fat and has kind of matured out in her face. And so, yeah, I just thought the makeup and hair for this film did such a good job, particularly with the Brodie girls, aging them so gracefully from young tweens into now teenagers graduating from school. So I thought that was a very well done bit of production work. I don't know, Hilary, what do you think?
I was going to say the exact same thing. When you see Sandy, when she's sitting for the painting with Lloyd, I was gooped fully. Is that the same actress? Oh my gosh, I think it is. And I think, just as you said, your example of Jenny and things like that, it, especially given the time, there's no CGI, there's no cutting corners. That's did a very good job. It reminded me of Little Women and things like that.
Yeah.
But it's gradual until it's no, she's a woman or thinks she's a woman now or is behaving in such a way, what she cosplaying as a grown-up almost, so many people do at that time. And I'm sure if I watched it many more times, there would be so many things I would notice that I just unfortunately can't speak to right now. But I do feel with wardrobe, I can't put my finger on it, but like the portraying of the two lovers and things like that. I think there
Yeah.
was like color crossover. Yeah, like I said, I can't speak
Yeah.
too intelligently to it, but
Yeah.
it was clear there were things going on. And I think too, like even the photo behind you of
the purple,
purple, and Miss Mackay is always in gray, and so I think there's stories being told there.
Yeah. Alicia, what do you think? What stood out to you?
I also said hair and makeup, but I'm going to change my answer because that's
okay.
Because you both talked about it in a lovely way, and I'll be saying the exact same things. But also, I just put down hair and makeup because it's pretty, so I didn't have like too much to say.
Love it.
So I'm going to jump to. Can I say direction? That's a production element.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah, absolutely, it is.
And I foolishly forgot to look up the director of this.
I can tell you, it is Ronald Neame.
Ronald Neame. Okay, wonderful.
Yeah.
So I just thinking about the powerful performances in this piece, the monologues from the characters, Mary's role, just like performing that quote unquote troubled character who has things going on in their life. Mary is the one with the pigtails, I think.
Yeah, right? Mary McGregor's the one that goes off and dies. R.I.P. Mary.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't want to say it that, but yes, that's what happened to Mary. Yes. Just there were such powerful performances. I'm thinking of the scene when Mary sees Miss Brodie and Lloyd making out, and then the girls confront her and hang her over the railing. I was crazy. Like, is she okay? Is everyone okay? And then just the switch around to her giggling and sharing the story was so fun to watch. Shout out to the actress who played Mary. Wonderful job. That was the other person that was in my mind for thoughts on the rest of the cast. But the direction itself really stood out to me because I didn't think there was a weak performer in this piece.
Yeah. Fun fact, Ronald Neame, the director, also directed such great films as The Poseidon Adventure. He also directed I Could Go On Singing, which is Judy Garland's last film, and Scrooge, starring Albert Finney. And he produced quite a few other great British things like Brief Encounters, Great Expectations, Oliver Twist, the 1948 one. And he received 2 Academy Award nominations for writing. So he was quite a prolific director and writer of his time. So, and he's a man too, which is something else where it's like, this is a predominantly female-led film, and yet you have this male director leading it, and he was able to get such a great nuanced performances and story out of this. And he totally didn't sexualize the girls in any way. Like, that was a big thing too. Like, even with Sandy's scene with, what's his name, Lloyd there, you never felt lecherous or, what's the word I'm looking for? Exploitative in that scene. Like, it was all done very tastefully for like what that scene had to do. Where like it could have been really like a creepy guy director being like, let's really show off Sandy's body and make it like really like sexy. And it's like, oh, like, that's not what the scene's about. And he understood that. So good choice, Alicia. Good choice on direction. Sarah, what stood out to you?
I actually had the costumes down as what's really good. I love and color. The color of the costumes actually is what had really struck me as well. I loved the sort of contrast that we always had in Miss Brodie. She always was in a little bit of a pop of color in a scene in comparison to the kind of grays and whites.
She's rebelling.
Exactly. And it was just perfect for her character. Also, shout out to the scarf acting, because we got a lot of great over the shoulder scarf flips. And actually, this hadn't struck me until I was looking at this picture behind you, Mac, but I'm interested because so many of her costumes, she either was wearing a scarf that she would like flip over her shoulder, or that shirt that she's wearing there also has a bit of a high collar and sort of a asymmetrical. It also gives a little bit of that same line as though like a scarf being. And I don't have necessarily something to say about that, but I feel like a story was being told in the neckline and how the consistency of that throughout her costumes. But it was really the color that struck me, and I just thought that was a very effective storytelling technique.
I think it's interesting with the costumes that you bring up, because when you watch her progress throughout the entire film, she's always in these bright pops of color. And then after the school dance, she loses the color. Like she goes into more of these demurred, darker, heavier colors, showing kind of that she's lost, basically. She's lost Mary McGregor. She's lost, what's his name? The choir master. Like just the storytelling in that, because that dance dress, that polka dot Shivani style dance dress, just incredible. Like, love it. And then also matching it so it complements her red hair is something that's such a unique, like I can tell you as a redhead, finding the right colors that match red hair is tricky because red hair is such a unique, it's a different blend of different colors. It's blonde, it's brown, it's how red is it? Like just that detail in the costume, that everything, it made her look so chic. And once again, it's that allure of her, of the color. It's like, oh, she draws you like a moth to the flame of color. It's like, I want to watch it because Ms. Mackay's in the grays. It's like, oh, you're boring. Like you're the classic school, follow the rules, conservative, boring, bland character type. And then you got this pop of color and you can't help but be drawn to that energy. But I love everything with the scarf. And you go back and rewatching it to figure out what that symbolism of the scarf was and why she does it.
Something just struck me, and I don't know if this is it at all, but I'm thinking the scarf acting seemed to be, if I remember correctly, more in the beginning of the film and into the middle. And I'm interested because I'm looking at this photo from the final scene, and something about this kind of button, this panel that kind of like comes across her, it feels very protective and sort of like a shield. Whereas the scarf is so like flowy and fun and a little bit more whimsical and has a little bit more drama, but this feels like a little bit more protective. And so I don't know, there's something about it feeling like it's calling to this look that obviously Miss Brodie loves, of this kind of like neckline asymmetrical look thing, but it's not free anymore. It's not whimsical. It's like it's actually a shield. And I'm sort of,
it's like a breastplate.
Yes,
it's like an armored breastplate.
Exactly. So I don't know if that's at all what they were thinking when they picked these costumes out, but that's kind of how it strikes me.
She's protecting her heart. It's been broken, so she's got the breastplate on now that locks it up. So there we go. That's what we'll say it's about.
Perfect.
There we go. Symbolism. All right. Let's get into some deeper, heavier questions. Some political questions a bit here. So in recent years, much attention has been made of the relationship between teachers and students. Now, certain topics and subjects are taught and discussed in schools. Where do you feel the moral line is for staff and student relations? And how do you feel, and do you feel Ms. Brodie oversteps as an educator? Is she rightfully terminated from her position? And should educators express their political ideologies in the classroom? Hilary, we'll let you kick this one off. As our newest member,
just a light question, like swing. I think, like, it made me think of teachers that meant so much to me and were so integral to my development as a child. And I think it's really important, like, and sorry, what's the quote that she says?
Oh, at the end?
But also at the beginning.
Little girls, I am in the business of putting old heads on young shoulders. And all my pupils are the creme de la creme. Give me a girl at an impressionable age, and she is mine for life.
Yeah, so I thought that was so interesting, and I think it also opens on that exact same line as well.
Correct. That's her first kind of opening classroom scene when she has the two new students, Mary McGregor and the other one, the Girl Scout.
Yeah, we love a bookend. And so I think it's really important is like you're young, that you're exposed to many different things so that you can figure it out for yourself. And so it's, if your parents have certain beliefs versus like this teacher is this teacher, like all of those things. I definitely think she crossed some lines, and some of it I was like, is this a sign of the times thing? Is the reminiscent of this versus, just teachers that, would just say kind of their personal beliefs on certain things. But but also I went to school, like I was in elementary school in the 90s in Saskatchewan too. So it's all, I'm sure it's different as well. But I do think like there's room for creativity, and education is about like play, like learning through play. There's so many different ways to learn. And so you have to be open to so many things. But I definitely do think she crosses a line. But I do like what she says to the headmistress, like it's manipulative. And she comes in swinging when she's in that large scene with Miss Mackay, or Miss McKay, however you'd like to pronounce it. But
Miss Mackay.
Miss Mackay, exactly.
Yeah.
But what I do find that, and she obviously has the argument in her back pocket already, is like, well, this is just fantasy that these young girls have come up with, and they would do it no matter what. So this is nothing to do with me.
Yeah.
But obviously,
fake news.
Yeah. So obviously, she like pokes and prods it, but it was also like, well, the picnics that they had and so many things. So yeah, so it does cross the line 1,000%, but it's a nuance. It's a great conversation.
Yes.
And that's it.
Yeah. Alicia, what do you think?
I wrote down, this is a tough question because it's tough. I'm shocked you even asked this question, even though we were all thinking it. But of course, it was in the notes, so I knew it was coming.
Yeah.
Okay. As a student, as I saw myself in those girls. I really saw myself in those girls, and being happy that a teacher is expressing interest in worldly matters in terms of life isn't just books. Life is picnics in the park and opera. So I thought that was cool. I thought that was neat. During my first watch, I think you kind of mentioned this, Mac, of like watching it the first time and just being on Miss Brodie's side, and then kind of, and as the movie plays out, you start to notice things. So that's how I felt. The first time I watched this, I was like, oh, that was weird, but I'm still loving Miss Brodie and she's great. But as I was watching this again this morning, I'm like, oh, wait, how did I miss that? And I do feel for Miss Mackay. I do think, as rigid and as conservative and in her ways she is, ultimately she was trying to, this is a school. We can't have teachers making out in the classroom and students catching on. And like, if I saw that as a student, I would probably think things as well. I'd tell all my friends and be like, I saw so-and-so making out. And there are lines that were definitely crossed and that shouldn't have been crossed. Miss Brodie seems like the cool aunt almost. Like the one that I feel like is like fun at parties, but in an establishment, I think she crossed the line multiple times. A student winds up dead later on. Like, just so many things. It's tough though, because I respect her spirit of wanting to really teach her students about the world, not just what's in the specific educational boundaries. But as an adult, as someone, like if I had a child under her care, I would be worried. And that's kind of my thoughts. Like, as an adult, I don't know. I don't know about Miss Brodie. So that's my answer. It's kind of a wishy-washy answer, but watching it, being on the outside looking in, I think Miss Brodie's kind of cool. But if this was reality, I wouldn't want her anywhere near my imaginary children. That's kind of where I'm at.
Fair. Sarah?
Yeah, it's funny. I did not have a hard time answering this question. For me, it was like a guttural, yes, she went too far. But as I had like quite a reaction to the question, because I was like, absolutely, she crossed the line. But then I was trying to examine in which ways, because I had the exact same feeling of like, well, there were certain things that I totally agree with. Exactly. These things about opening their minds to things beyond the classroom and learning through play and these experience, like being able to go out in the world and have field trips and like, that's totally in line with my view of how education should be. So I'm like, okay, so and I actually have very specific things that are what I think are the spots that she crossed the line on, because I think she could have continued to be cool and worldly and exposing them to things and opening their minds and still been appropriate. The areas for me that are a problem, and I think like Alicia thinking about it like an imaginary parent and would I want my kid, like that's such a good way of framing it, because the things that make me uncomfortable are actually, first of all, the places that she chose to take them on the outings. Like, I have a problem with the fact that you have brought your group of girls into multiple situations where an old man is the sometimes only caretaker around them. It is not, you don't have other teachers with you so that there's like supervision for the kids, but also each other. There's no accountability. You're just taking the girls anywhere you deem fit because you want to go there without any kind of protections in place, to the point where you're exposing girls to an artist who you know is a potential danger, right? Like, and we know later we figure out that's part of her plan anyway. So that's a piece of it. But even if it hadn't been, that you put young girls in a dangerous situation there and setting them up to think it was okay. So they are now primed and groomed to be susceptible to his advantage. Like, it's dangerous. So it was like the type of field trip that she would take them on was problem. I also felt like, as I thought about it more, a piece where I think she crossed the line is the obvious favoritism of those 4 girls. Because I think it's one thing to say picnics are lovely and it's getting the kids outside and it's like the wonderful things that the influence that can have on education. But what actually was happening was there was 4 girls in particular that she had latched onto and had formed a particular favoritism with. And the problem with that is that now those 4 girls, they have the attention of a person they absolutely admire, an authority figure who they totally admire. They will do anything for her now, right? Like, if you picture some teacher that you absolutely adored or some authority figure that you adored, and then they also showed obvious favoritism to you, like, you would do anything for them. So I think there's a piece of a manipulation around who she picked as her favorites and why. And that was like, if she every day had a picnic on a rotation with a different 4 girls every day, and it was part of their education, that would be different. But it was the way that this was done. So, and the same for me with you. She teaches a lot about Mussolini in her class. Now, I think as a teacher, you know, this is, I think probably what makes this tricky for us is it's like when we're watching her teach, we don't like fascism. So it's easy for us to go, you shouldn't bring your ideals into the classroom. If you replaced her ideals with something that you agreed with, then it becomes harder to go, well, of course you should stand up for, you know, progressive values in the classroom because that's right? Like, so that's where it does feel tricky. But I think maybe what it is sort of, you can teach the values of bravery and courage and standing up for oneself without talking about Mussolini. So I feel like your job as an educator is to instill values in a child, but not an ideology. And it can be hard when we, especially in today's political climate, we have strong opinions on what's going on out there in the world. But she could still have, this is a long-winded answer. But
no, this is a great answer.
Oh, I think where it comes from is like, she could still empower her girls, teach them to be open-minded, instill them with courage, teach them to stand up for themselves and look at the world, take them on field trips, safe field trips to explore things. She could have picnics outside. All of those things could still happen, which are the things that we love about her. But the manner in which that she does them, whether it's she teaches about Mussolini instead of just values, the favoritism, the dangerous situations, like, those are the pieces that left her crossing the line for me. So I think there's a way to be as cool as she is and still keep the kids safe. And she didn't do it. So that's what struck me.
Well said, Sarah.
Yeah,
Thank you.
snaps.
Can I say
Snaps
something
and
really
claps.
quick?
Yeah.
Off of what Sarah said, just a small thing that I forgot to mention. During one of the picnics, I think there was only one real picnic scene actually, but Miss Brodie was talking about the girls, saying how she sees them in the future.
Yes.
And she said, Jenny, you're going to be painted a lot and you're going to have lots of sex. That's weird to say as a teacher. super weird.
Yes.
I didn't notice
Yes.
that the first time I watched it. I just noticed that this morning, and I was like, "Wait, what did she just say?
Yep.
Run that.
What did she just say?"
Rewind.
Sarah, you're yeah. I'm like, what? Huh? Pause, rewind.
Mhm.
So you're so right. They're just
Mhm.
having that like the students were attached to her in a way
Mhm.
that it wasn't like the same for all students. I think there was an imbalance that you brought up, Sarah, and I didn't know how to phrase it, so I'm happy you brought that up because I thought it was just a smaller group of like that was just a small class. But I'm realizing she just
She chose them.
idolized.
Yeah.
They were her favorites. They were her
Mhm.
favorite students. I just wanted to quickly throw
Yeah.
that in there.
And also, like, very early in the film, one of the first lectures you see her give, she's talking about an affair that she had. And it's like,
Yes. Yeah, in Italy
very
in the summer. Oh no,
clarifying.
in Flanders. In Flanders.
yeah,
The
in
guy who dies in
Flanders,
Flanders.
yeah, but then also Italy.
Yeah.
Like, it's hard to
Yeah.
keep track of them all, you know, which is like,
Yeah.
sure,
Yeah. Yeah.
like, live your life, listen,
Yeah.
but like, not appropriate.
Yeah. 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 I mean, there's not much more I can say after Sarah's brilliant answer to this. So, I mean, I'll wrap my answer up as quickly as I can. But yeah, I think the moral line, and I think, Sarah, you hit on it, is it's the personal element that Ms. Brodie brings in. Like, I remember in high school, I was very close with all the teachers. I was that weird kid who, had tea with the vice principal. I had a desk in the music office. I had a desk in the main office that I could work at because I ran different things in the school, Like, I had a very close relationship, but never once did I have a principal or a teacher talk to me about their personal love life and what goes on there. Like I knew some of the teachers were married to other teachers in the school, but never once did I see them doing anything affectionate in the hallway. I mean, I knew our like music teacher had a very well-known wife who absolutely was, very good realtor. Like, she was very friendly when we all saw her when she came to the concert, but she never was, openly talked about and what went on there. And like, he had sons of his own that he had taught at the same school. He never talked about that really. It wasn't until after I graduated that they all went, "Mac, you can stop calling us, Mr. Winfield or Mr. Welch. You can call us Mark and Steve now." Like, we're at that point in our relationship where we can be a bit more personal. But like, they were very clear about where that line was. And to back that up, like, I didn't know any of their political ideology. Like, I am sure some of my teachers were more conservative and some of them were more liberal. But never once did that ever come into a conversation. Like, even in our history class, when we were learning about Canadian history and world history, never once did their own political ideology influence what was being taught. It was very much, these are the historical facts. This is what we're going to talk about today. This is why this happens. Like, even when, we, like, on my history teacher, we talked about the world of gray. He talks about Hitler. Like, he wasn't praising Hitler, but he goes, why did Hitler come to power? Well, it's because people felt this way, and this way. And it's because this is what was happening economically. And this is what was going on. He never came in and said, oh, Hitler was a great man because, he brought Germany back from the brink of economic collapse after that horrible Treaty of Versailles and sided with Hitler. He just went, Hitler, like, there's a reason why Hitler came to be who he was. Like, it wasn't just he was a bad man right away and everybody just knew about that. Like, you have to understand what went into that. And having that open type of dialogue where you're not taking a side, you're just giving it down the line and avoiding the personal. And I think that's where that's where Miss Brodie fails as a teacher, is that because she doesn't have her own kids, her own partner, she kind of relies on the students to fill in that gap. It's kind of like when you see. So I love some good trashy reality TV, and Dance Moms was a fun show to watch growing up. But one of the arguments the moms always made to Abby Miller was, "You're not a mom. You don't have kids of your own. You rely on our kids to be your kids. And you telling our kids to not trust us as parents, in that you are the one that needs to be in charge. When, you have our kids doing fan dances in Vegas and look topless, it's wrong. Like we are the parents. You are the teacher. Like it is our job to mold and shape our kids, not you. It's your job to be the guardrail and give them the facts and the figures and then let us as parents mold all that fact and figure. And then if we don't fully agree with what was taught, then we can talk about that and go, actually, I don't agree with that history teacher's perspective on why Hitler came to power. I think it was this reason. You know, like that's the thing there where like she gets too personal. And I think that's ultimately why Mrs. McKay is right to fire her at the end.
But I think this is why this is like a story as old as time kind of thing, or because it's such a nuanced discussion too, because you also don't see these girls' parents at all, right?
It's a boarding school.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's like they are,
in
some ways, there's this diagram of that they are also kind of parental-like to them. And yes, that concept is great of the. So if you have supportive parents and everything like that, or parents that you can have dialogue with, and not everybody does. And I think it's like, there's a reason why teacher-student relationships, types of education, and I know we're going to talk about that later, but like there's a reason why it all bleeds in, and why there's a story, not this story, but stories like this are still being told, and all of that.
Yeah. That's fascinating. Well, speaking of student-teacher relationships, let's get into the next question, which is, in the climactic confrontation between Miss Brodie and her student-turned-assassin, Sandy, Sandy suggests that Miss Brodie didn't truly care for Mary McGregor. Instead, only uses Mary as a prop to further her own efforts and political opinions. Do you agree with this assessment, or do you believe that Miss Brodie really did care for Mary? Hilary, what are your thoughts on this?
I don't know. I don't know. I think, and maybe this is like me having rose-colored glasses and the fact that I only watched the film once, and I'm like, but Maggie, but like, she's not a psychopath. You know what I mean? Like, she is manipulative, but she is deeply caring. Like, I truly believe that she does love all these girls, and that these group of girls were, you know, in her years of teaching, likely stood out to her. And so I like to think she did care about her, and she did seem affected after, like, the horrible news about Mary came in and everything. But did she want Mary to go? I don't know. There's a lot of things I don't know.
Sarah?
Answer, but
no is the answer that comes to me. I don't think. I believe Miss Brodie believes that she cares about them. I think in her mind, what she is doing is caring for them in her own way. I think what she cares a lot about is the influence that she has. She takes her role very seriously, and in her own way, her being a teacher and what she instills in the girls, I think she cares a lot about. So feeling like she successfully instilled her values in Mary, and Mary went off to do this brave thing because she had successfully imparted her ideals on her. I think that's the way that she cares about them. And so to her, that is caring. But from the outside, we can see that's it. I think she struck me as a very selfish person. Her actions are really around what she feels, what she wants, what she believes is right. And so, yeah, it's hard for me to really feel that she did care for Mary, aside from this care about, oh, I love my girl and I love to instill my values in the girl, and like, so, and I did it. So she cares about her in that way. That's how it feels to me, especially because of the kind of lack of reaction we do get about Mary's death. I think if her reaction had been like really heartbroken, or we had seen even any like guilt, then I might have felt differently, because I might have been like, oh, she got carried away. She didn't think that Mary was going to actually do that. And then now realize, but it was like, almost like she didn't even, not only did she not take responsibility for it happening, it was like, she was like, that's what happens when you fight for your ideals. Sometimes you die. Like that. That's kind of how
Except it was the wrong side. That's the thing she totally misses, that Mary was on the wrong, like,
wrong side.
Well, because her brother was on the other side. Her brother was on the revolutionary side against Franco.
So exactly. So I just think Yeah, it's hard for me to watch this based on her reaction and then all of it and go, yeah, I think she really cared about Mary. I think it was a selfish kind of caring.
I'm going to piggyback off you, Sarah, because I also had that in my notes too, where the film talks about how, at least it implies that there have been other Brodie girls, like how Miss Brodie picks girls in each of her classes and kind of raises them up. And then, because we see that later on when Sandy sees her talking to a bunch of younger kids, and she's doing the same type of thing. And the one redhead girl even looks like a young Jenny or Jean, whatever that girl's name was.
Jenny, yeah.
It's Jenny. Yeah, you're
Jenny,
right.
Jenny. Or like, and Sandy catches it. It's like she's watching from the gate and she sees Miss Brodie almost doing the same type of lesson again, having that same type of conversation with these younger girls again, and she's picking them off. So I do, like, once again, I think, I guess I don't think she's a full psychopath, but I do think there is a level of power and manipulation that Miss Brodie feels because she's trying to master manipulate her girls into these different professions and positions in the world. And that's what she wants. Like, and the fact that she doesn't like the girl who, you know, is a Girl Scout or a Girl Guide, whatever that is, because she has independence. She has outside figures who are, you know, teaching and influencing her. She picks Mary, who's an orphan, who's alone in the world, who needs someone to cling on to. And like any, I don't want to use the word predator, but like any good predator, they find, you know, the people who are the weakness are people who need that level of attention, and they can use it and harness it to their benefit. Like the fact that it's so performative, like right after the scene where Sandy comes to her, knocks on her door, and leaves the newspaper. And the next scene, she's in black, and has the picture of Mary up in the classroom, and she's at the map giving this impassioned speech about Franco. It's a totally wrong thing. Like she's fake newsing it. She is manipulating the story to fit her political ideology. And so the fact that Sandy takes the rose-colored glasses off, even though she does wear glasses, but she takes off her rose-colored glasses because what happens with Mr. Lloyd, and then she comes back right out because it's the Mr. Lloyd scene. Then as she's on her way back from Mr. Lloyd, that's when she sees Miss Brodie. Miss Brodie teaching the younger students, and you see her. You see the wool coming off her eyes, going, "Oh, you're not just a wholesome teacher trying to give us extra attention. You are someone who is using us as the Brodie girls." Because they're labeled as a unit of the Brodie girls. Like she lumps them up and keeps them, like, you know, in her treasure chest. And so, and then also the fact that she has actually manipulated Jenny to try and get into an affair with 17 with an artist. It's like, no, like she uses all these girls in her own way. Once again, fulfilling these dreams and these fantasies of things she doesn't have. And so she's using it in her own, like I don't think she fully cares about Mary in the way that we would want her to care about a student. I think there is an element of manipulation of Mary's dead. I can use this for my own narrative that I'm wanting to give to this situation. And then it also removes her guilt that she's probably feeling about sending Mary off to the front line because
she's like absolved.
Exactly, because she goes, Mary was a true courageous person. She went out on her own. She took the train, even though Sandy goes, Mary would get lost like getting out of a paper bag. Like she was like the most manipulative, like most manipulated because she was so kind of, she's a follower. Mary was not a leader in that group. She was someone who was easily coerced and manipulated into revealing secrets. And, you know, it was just, I don't know. Alicia, what do you think? Where do you fall on this answer?
Well, I'm also a little torn. Truthfully, I think Miss Brodie did care for Mary and her Brodie girls. I do that with quotations.
Yeah.
Because she did have favorites. And I do think there was a weird dynamic where she felt like these were her kids, in some sort of way. I was going to say her crew. Because the way, what you just said, Mac and Sarah, it is making me think more so of these girls were almost like her troops, not really her kin, if anything.
Yeah.
But I'm going to still lean towards that she did care for Mary in a way that was more than just a puppet. And it is very tragic that Mary went off fought on the wrong side, ended up dying.
Yeah.
I didn't think that was going to happen. I didn't think Mary was actually going to do it. I didn't think she was going to do it. I feel like Mary is a child in this sense. Like, I think at this point she was 17.
Yes. Yeah, she's about to graduate.
She's about to graduate.
Mm-hmm.
I do think Miss Brodie got carried away 100% with her speech of, yes, go fight in this war. It doesn't have to be just the men. Get your brother, defend him, all that. She got carried away once again. But I also will say Mary had a decision. She didn't have to go to war. She didn't have to run off. I think at that point, she's 17. She can make a decision of whether to go to war or not. She could have chose not to. But I guess the question is, does Miss Brodie care for Mary? I think she does. I think she did. I think her dying did affect her. But I also am starting to think that Miss Brodie lives a different land. She's in like almost like a not a fairy tale land, but
like she sees, correct me if I'm misunderstanding, but like she perceives things as truth or real, that it is like very much her perception.
Yeah.
Rather than, is that kind of what you're getting at?
Saying, I think someone mentioned it earlier of maybe she's so stuck in her own world of like, I'm a teacher. I will teach until I die, but I'll tell everyone my ideas of how I see what I should be doing. Like, for example, trying to push Jenny and Lloyd together. Weird. Very weird. Don't even get together at the end of it. It's Sandy and Lloyd.
Yeah.
And then her pushing Mary to fight because maybe deep down she believes that she could fight, but she knows that she's a teacher and she's not going to do it. So it's just that twisted mindset that I'm trying to grasp of her telling people things that she knows that she actually can't do. Like, that's where things get really messed up.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel that. I feel what you're putting down. But Alicia, we'll let you start this next question, which is, this film and source material have much to say about female sexuality and agency, particularly in relation to when the film premiered in 1969, and then also there was the play and the book that came a bit earlier in the early 60s, late 50s. Do you feel this film's message about this topic is still relevant today, or does it make the film feel dated at all?
Wonderful question. I think a lot of the topics within this film are still very relevant. In terms of Teddy Lloyd, and versus Miss Brodie, they're both teachers at this establishment. Teddy's also kind of a jerk. He is a jerk. He's weird.
He is
creepy. He's a predator.
He's a married man with multiple children. He has like 6 kids.
He has 6 kids.
Yeah.
Married.
The whole time I was like, where are your kids? Where is your wife?
Go home. Like,
so and there's a moment in the play, probably in the play as well, but there's a moment in the film adaptation of when Teddy's teaching the younger students and they're giggling because there's nudity in what he's painting. And he tells them all to shut up. And I'm like, this guy kind of sucks. Like, so there's just a dynamic of, someone let me know if I'm getting this correct. But so Miss Brodie is basically being threatened to be terminated by Miss Mackay, as well as the other teacher that I keep forgetting the name of.
Oh, Mr. Lowther, the choir master.
The choir master, Mr. Lowther. Is Lloyd also in that as well? Or
he is. He's the upper school art teacher. So when the girls start the show, they're in the junior school. They're about to go into the upper school. And so basically, but he teaches the upper kids, which is icky once again. This man who's teaching older, soon to be young adult women. And he's showing them like art in a very sexualized way. And he leaves nude sketches out in his art studio for them to find.
It's gross. It's gross.
Like the fact that there's that one scene where, it's like the drawing of like a nude man, but he's like, I was drawing the biceps. And it's like, were you?
Or he's like, I had a hard time with the pectorals.
That's the pectoral. Yeah.
I don't know if I answered your question 100%, but I do think in terms of, I feel for Miss Brodie because I feel like she is someone who would stand up for women's rights. I say that with a question mark because she's a little all over the place, but
that she is.
That she is.
But also just, yeah, I don't know. I think I'm trying to look at what I wrote down, and I just kind of wrote down, this is relevant, and Mr. Lloyd versus Miss Brodie. I think there's just that dynamic. I think he kind of, he's still so gross throughout the movie, but he doesn't get as much confrontation. I think we see that mostly with Miss Brodie, and the dynamic between her and Sandy as well. So I think I would have loved to see a bit more of Teddy getting dragged down, because he's such a main.
He gets to marry the chemistry teacher and live happily ever after.
No, that's Lowther.
That's Lowther.
Oh, sorry, Lowther.
Yeah.
Yes, Lowther does. Yeah. Lloyd.
I didn't have too many problems with Lowther. He just seemed nice. I kept forgetting who he was. I was like, oh, he's still here.
That guy.
He's like the nice guy, you know. He's just looking for a wife, and you know, Miss Brodie kind of turns him down, so he turns to the chemistry teacher with her gases.
With her gases, of course. So yeah, that's kind of my answer to this question. Of there are definitely strong elements that are still relevant today. Is my overall answer.
Yeah, Hilary, what do you think?
Definitely still relevant today. I think, like I was saying before, like it's a tale as old as time, and in some ways, you know, it's this was made in 1969 and written before that, and there's a lot of crossover still, and maybe I'm just being sympathetic because I also agree with everything that Alicia just said. Yeah, it's drag Teddy is the day is long. Where's your wife? Where's your kids? This poor family, and would have loved to actually see some repercussions on his behalf, or that he came to. But it's like the patriarchy is not good for anybody. And our girl, Jean Brodie, is operating within it. And there's because she doesn't have access to everything that she should, she has to use her feminine ways or whatnot. She seeks power in other different ways too, and obviously she's just, as Alicia said, all over the place. I agree. It's she probably would stand up for women's rights, I think, question mark. But, so I don't know if that actually answers it or not, but absolutely still relevant. And but I also feel for Jean Brodie, and then it's also all the girls are operating within that same system too.
Yeah. Sarah?
That is very well said. Honestly, not much to add there, because I think you both covered it, that it is still very relevant, and everything you just said too, Hilary, about the patriarchy and the ways that she operates within it to get some power for herself. That's all completely true. And I think what it brings up for me is just, on TikTok right now, there's a big discourse around teachers. There was this whole fad where teachers would film themselves as their students were coming into the room, and they would be greeting their students, and they'd be kind of filming and showing what their interaction with their kids is like. And then there was sort of a backlash towards that, because it was you're flirting with your student. I'm hearing the way you're talking to the boys in your class, you're flirting with the boys. You talk differently to them with the girls. And there was a couple TikTokers who got in hot water because of what was perceived as just an over intimacy with particular students. And this was all kind of playing out on TikTok in real time. And it reminds me of that this idea of the relationship between a teacher and a student, and what is appropriate and what is not appropriate, it continues to be true today, whether it's in larger political issues, because there's lots of that in terms of what's being allowed or banned from classrooms and things like that. But even just in these, in the what is an appropriate line in your interpersonal relationship with a student, we're still apparently grappling with that as a society right now. So it didn't strike me as dated at all in that way. I was like, still a relevant question.
I mean, for me, the way I looked at it was, I always view this as almost a little bit more progressive than some of the stuff we get today. Not particularly between the Miss Brodie and her lover triangle, but it's more between the students and female sexuality amongst the students of that group, and the way it's portrayed very openly, and it's not sexualized, but clearly they're exploring sexuality within themselves and their group dynamic. I thought was a very progressive thing that in 69 was not something that was talked about at all. I mean, you know, the fact that we get a Seinfeld episode in the 90s where like all the characters have a contest, and the fact that Elaine gets to participate in that contest was a huge, you know, big moment in like female writing of characters that, oh no, they can play with the boys. Like they're not just, you know, demure, restricted, reserved. So the fact you have Miss Brodie who's experiencing her own sexuality in one way, in a more mature, then you also have the students. Like there's that tango scene between, I think it's Sandy and Jenny, where they're talking about what is going on between Miss Brodie and Mr. and Lloyd. And the fact that they break into her room to find letters and they talk about Miss Brodie's sex life. It's like, oh no, like it's a human thing. Like it's not demonizing what young kids get up to. Like, you know, it's not so taboo. It's human for there to be curiosity in the world, in each other, in ourselves. Like, so I think this one was actually a bit more progressive than stuff we don't get to see talked about as much even today in our media culture. It's still very conservative, particularly in Western films. Like obviously European films have a very different vibe to them, but like these topics that these girls and Miss Brodie are talking about, I think are far more progressive than I think people, you know, would be willing to touch today, particularly in this political climate where we are over-sexualizing these topics. We are demonizing topics that don't need to be demonized. It's like the body is a body. Like just teach the facts, like teach the truth. Like it's not, you know, it's not so scary, like making everything scary and demonizing one group versus another group and what goes on with the bodies. And it's like, you know, I remember when the Ontario sex ed curriculum got updated, and there were huge protests about, you know, basic things like, you know, teaching children the proper anatomy of a body, which is important because if something is to happen, like an assault or anything like that, like my teacher friend, she's like, no, it's important for us to be able to have a student say directly what it is, like understand what the anatomy is, understand what's going on, so they can have a voice in these situations. So I just think this film was far more progressive than I think some modern pieces are going for on multiple levels and multiple generations of this topic. And the fact that the 69 is only a few years. Well, no, actually the ERA, the Equal Rights Act in the US was in the process of being debated between the political parties at the time. And so, yeah, I just think it's a fascinating thing when you look at it from that lens of time, and then looking at it, how little we've progressed in, how much we've progressed in how we talk about certain topics. So, yeah, fascinating. All right, last question. So, having now seen this film, does that now make you interested in reading the source material from which it is adapted from, either Muriel Park's original novel or Jay Presson Allen's stage play? Sarah, what are your thoughts?
It does for sure. I think I'm glad I saw the film just on its own and was able to kind of take that in fresh and be surprised by it. But I just thought it was so powerfully written, something we didn't talk a ton about, but just the quality of the dialogue in this film, it was so strong, especially looking at, you know, the final scene between Sandy and Miss Brodie. Like, it reminds me a lot. We were talking about the Crucible at the beginning. It reminds me of something I love about that show too, and plays turned film that are just so rich in their dialogue, and the words, it's like they just cut like a knife, you know, like they're just so the arguments, the tactics that the characters are using, they're so strong and so clear, and it's just a beautiful thing. And so now that I've gotten a chance to see it, I would love to go back and look at the source material and just see what things what is directly from the book or the play, what did they massage to make work on film, especially because that ending line of the movie that's also at the beginning, I was like floored. That speech she gives about like the adult heads on young shoulders, and once a girl's mine, she's mine forever. I would I want to go and read it and go, is that bookended in the play like that, or in the book like that, or was that a choice for the movie? Because it was so powerful, especially because the first time you hear it at the beginning, it doesn't strike you as, it's kind of like, oh, interesting. And then at the end, when you hear it again, you're like, Oh, ooh. Like it just
Okay.
it has a completely different resonance by the end of the movie. So yeah, that's the kind of thing I would just love to go dig in and see what did the screen adaptation pull to make work on film and what was already there. Be really interesting.
Yeah, for sure. Hilary, what are your thoughts?
Well, 1000%. I absolutely want to, and Sarah articulated it so well. Like I want, I love being able to compare, and it's like, oh, what's this version? What's this? And did they take it from that? So I would happily read both, and I hopefully I'll definitely at least read the play probably in the next couple weeks, and then
will you be adding a Mrs. Jean Brodie monologue into your book of monologues for auditions?
Maybe we'll see. I'll have to read the play and confirm. But it's I thought about like the role and everything. We had talked about like Maggie Smith's filmography and everything earlier, and this is like meat and potatoes acting. Like the dialogue, I want to read the source material because the dialogue, the writing, the work itself is so strong. So
Alicia.
Yes, I agree with what has been said as well. I would love to read the play, and I also would love to see the play. I think this would be wonderful to see on stage with certain films or with certain things that are adapted into different media. So this was a novel first, then stage play, and then film. I think that was the circle of events. Sometimes things don't translate as well for different mediums. But I think with this film, knowing that there's a story behind it before, knowing that there's a novel to start, I want to work my way back. I think I want to read the play, and then if there's a production of it, Stratford, if you're watching, you know what to do for the next season.
Yes.
I think it would be amazing to see this because there's so many things that are so relevant today. And also, I love seeing theater that's a little controversial, a little Mac, you said something earlier of this is the word dangerous comes to mind, but you said something of like it's a bit more like gritty than the usual thing we're seeing these days. So I think it'd be lovely to see this on stage. And then I also want to read the novel just to see the writing, as mentioned before from Sarah, and Hilary I think also mentioned this, but the writing is just so well done. So I would love to see that source material through and through.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I'm going to back all of you up and say I've added the Prime of Miss Jean Brodie to like my reading list for this year to like, because apparently it's not a long book. It's not like a heavy book. It's like a pretty easy, medium-sized, few hundred-page read. So it's not too hard to get through. So, and then Ryan did post about how there's no scanned copies. There's only like you have to go down to the library to like get a physical copy of the script to read. But I mean, I'd be down to go and do that because I think this is such a good piece. Like I would love to see the play done up where I think it's prime for a stage adaptation, whether that's Soul Pepper or Stratford or Shaw. Somebody's got to do this play because it's just, I mean, it was just revived recently on Broadway with Cynthia Nixon that we were talking about before we recorded. So I do think that there is something here where like I do think it has a timely quality that it should be brought up today. That I'm fascinated to see this work because Ryan was saying that the book was very popular when it came out, like it was a big hit at the time. So I'd be interested to go back and read it because the book was published it came out in 61. Came out in 1961. So it was an early 60s book. So I'd be interested to see what changed from the early 60s when it was published to now the late 60s when it becomes a film.
That's quick succession. Too. Like book, play, movie.
Yeah. Yes.
Within a decade, that's a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot. Clearly people like that source material and found it very meaty for somebody to get into. So I'd be down to explore all three versions because I think this is a piece of material that is ripe for the picking. So yeah, Stratford, program it. Lucy Peacock is Ms. Mackay. Come on, bring it on. Yeah, there we go. Anthony, it's your final season. I think this is a perfect show to go out on. Bring it on. Cast Hilary.
Okay.
Yeah, there you go.
Please, would love. Yeah.
There you go.
Say no to that.
Yeah, right. There we go. Well, on that note, we're going to wrap out this wonderful screenplay episode with a Big R.I.P. much love to the late, great Maggie Smith. And we will first give all our classic sign-offs. So, Alicia, where can people find and follow you?
For anyone who's interested in following me anywhere, check me out on Instagram. The Instagram is @Alicia Plummer. If you're on TikTok, my TikTok is @Hi Alicia by Alicia. So feel free to follow me on there.
Wonderful, wonderful. And all these we link down below in our video description for people to easily find and follow. Sarah, where can people find and follow you?
The best place to find me is on Instagram. I'm at heim.sarah. And I will say, I will put in a little plug that I made my first short film this year. It's called Alice is Fine. And we are submitting to festivals in the coming months. And so hopefully we're going to have a premiere date for it soon. So please follow my page. We'll have updates on there as things progress with the film, hopefully soon. So keep an eye out and please support us if you can.
Good for you. Making short films it's so hard. Good for you.
Thank you. I really appreciate that.
Yeah.
Hilary, where can people find follow you?
You can follow me on Instagram is probably best. I'm Hilary with one L, and my Instagram handle is Hilary Lynn. So Lynne, because Wirachowsky is too easy to misspell. So
Perfect. And you can follow me at Mackenzie Horner, all social media platforms. Follow my other musical theater antics over at Before the Downbeat, a musical podcast, where we're talking all about modern musicals, older musicals. We just recorded an episode on Book of Mormon. So that got into fun religious topics there. So if you're wanting something meaty and juicy there, come join us on that. And other than that, we will see everybody in the next episode. Thank you all so much for joining us. Stay healthy, stay safe, and we will see you all very soon. Cheers.
Cheers.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.